It's Zach Eady with Purdue men's basketball, and you're watching Boilers in the Stands.
We are live back for part 4 of our mid-offseason Big Ten preview. I'm your host, Joe Jackson. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Kraig Bowers. And today we are joined by Greg Waddell of Sleepers Media. Going to be talking Michigan with him for a bit, maybe get some thoughts from him on Illinois and Rutgers as well. But Greg, appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, fellas. It's good to see you guys.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll just get right into it. We're going to start with Michigan. They were 18-16 last season, number 48 offense, number 47 defense. And this is a team that's going to look a lot different than what they did last year. Lose Hunter Dickinson, Kobe Buffkin, Jet Howard, and Joey Baker. But they do bring in 4, as of right now, new players with 2 open scholarships remaining. I'm sure we may get into that too about what they might try to do with those. But they bring in Nimari Burnett, Trey Jackson, Olivier Nkamwa, and George Washington III, a freshman. So just before we really dive in, Greg, like what are your kind of just overall thoughts of the offseason, losing Dickinson and all that, but then what they've brought in and kind of what you're thinking for this season for them?
Yeah, it's been a weird year as a Michigan fan. I'm sure from the outsider's perspective, everyone across this conference can tell that. I feel a little refreshed, to be honest, now that we're through most of it. I mean, there were so many unknowns coming into this offseason from like, do they even want to run this back to like, are Kobe and Jet going to leave? And then it became clear those guys were going to be lottery picks or close to lottery picks, and they were gone. And then Hunter had a decision to make. And at first it surprised everyone, but then it really didn't the more you thought about it. So it's definitely a turning point. It's a reset for the program. And I said this in the middle of last season. Somebody asked me, like, hey, is the fact that Michigan's struggling, does that have any sort of indictment for you on Juwan Howard's trajectory and how you feel about him as a coach? And at the time, what I said was, I don't think we can truly judge Juwan Howard as a coach until Hunter Dickinson is not on his roster. Because to me, every problem Michigan had and every success Michigan had in the last 3 years came back to Hunter Dickinson himself. And I'm excited. I really am excited to see what Juwan Howard is made of in the post-Hunter Dickinson era. I think this is the toughest job that he's had. I think it's the least talented roster he's had. But I think it's also the first time in 4 years that I would look at this team and say, hey, I think this team could actually overachieve from what people think they're supposed to be. And that's a really refreshing feeling as a fan. So I'm excited for that. That does not mean I think Michigan's going to factor into the Big Ten at all. Some of their ads this offseason, I'm sure we'll get to, are a little more underwhelming than others. But all in all, I think this was a good, I guess, pause for this program from where it's been. It was a much needed guys out, guys in, revamping. And I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess, Greg, just as you look at this team, with all the production that they lost on the offensive end, whether it's new guys coming in or guys that are looking to make a jump from last year to this upcoming year, I mean, who on this team are you looking at to make that offensive jump to help fill that void?
It starts with Doug McDaniel for me, and I don't think that's the first name most people nationally would say. I think they would point to Olivier Comwa first. To me, Doug McDaniel has very high upside production-wise individually at Michigan. I don't know what that looks like. He should be a 4-year player. I keep biting my words when I say that about a lot of different guys in the Juwan Howard era. But on paper, Doug McDaniel should be a 4-year guy, given how small he is, no matter how good he is. That can be one of the most valuable things for any program. And I think we saw this really happen over the course of the second half of last season. But he went from a guy you were terrified to play more than 10 minutes a game to, oh, that's our starting point guard. And we like that. And he can match up with AJ Hoggard and Tyson Walker and win that matchup in their win in Ann Arbor last year. So I think the consistency is the big thing for him. Last year, he did not show much as far as table setting goes. When he was making an impact on games, it was him scoring for himself. And on a team that is so scoring depleted, as you allude to, you got to replace Jett Howard's shots and you got to replace Kobe Buffkin's shots. I think it's almost good that he has that skill set, more so than if he was a table setter and we were worried about who's going to be taking the shots. I'm pretty confident if Doug wants to, game one next season, he can go out and get a relatively efficient 15, 16 points a game. The question is, can he become a complete point guard? Can he elevate guys like Namari Burnett, who have earned roles on good teams but have never been a starter before? Can he take Olivier Comwa and turn him from role player extraordinaire into a really good Robin to his Batman? We'll have to see. I do have concerns there. I don't think he's ever going to be like a 6-7 assist a game guy, but the hope would be he has something there that's more advanced than the jump Chucky Hepburn didn't make last season. Everyone expected him to sort of be this all-around guy. He wasn't, and Wisconsin really struggled. I think that's sort of the burden that's going to be on Doug from day one this season.
Yeah, I think Doug's, prime example of a guy that could make that sophomore jump. It's him, Braden Smith. You can kind of see, although Braden had a little bit bigger role. For me, the biggest thing, like when I look at Michigan, is just the roster construction itself. There's 2 open scholarships I already mentioned, and all signs point to them trying to get at least one guy in. But when you look, it's like you have your guards kind of in McDaniel, Llewellyn, Washington. You have your bigs, and Reed. I know Nakamwa was not like a 5 per se, but Nakamwa, Terrence Williams, I think Kyatt's more of a 4, right? But then you don't really have these 3s, like these kind of wings. Namari Burnett is, and then Trey Jackson is sort of, and everything that I've seen has projected him to slot as the 3. Do you buy that? Is it more of a, hey, you move well, and we're just going to kind of throw you there and see what happens? Or you think he can actually like fill that role for them?
I don't buy that at all.
Or is it Jace Howard?
I don't buy that at all. And I'm terrified, guys. I've made jokes on like Michigan message boards this offseason. Like, no matter who we project, all these rosy projections of like, oh, Trey Jackson can provide shooting and he can start at the 3. Oh, Yusuf Kyatt's going to make a jump. He's our 3. The truth is, like, Terrence Williams played 27 minutes a game last year. And he's just sort of sitting there, and everyone from the Michigan fan base is projecting he's just not going to play at all because they went out and got multiple power forwards to play over him. That's great, but there's still a gaping hole at the other forward spot, and someone's got to play it. And Juwan Howard has time and time again went back to Terrence Williams over more unproven options. So I'm terrified of that. Like, the last thing Michigan needs is Terrence Williams playing down a position more. And I think, like, you make the joke about Jace, but Jace is shaped like a 3 more than most guys on this roster. And we've seen Juwan Howard go back to him time and time again in spot minutes. It is a glaring hole. I will say that. Like, there's no way around that. I think Michigan has to hope on paper. They've got Doug McDaniel, Terrace Reed, and Olivier Comwa, who are all 30-minute guys, barring foul trouble every single night. And then from there, you're really hoping that you can fill 60 minutes at the 2 and the 3 between Namari Burnett. If Jalen Llewellyn's a guy, then I think you play 3 guards. If he's not, which I don't expect him to be, then you're cycling through Trey Jackson, Yusuf Kayet, and whoever they add last minute if a name comes through. It's a scary proposition to be in. And I think people do gravitate toward Trey Jackson specifically because of shooting. Like on paper, they buy his jumper more so than you would Jace Howard or Terrence Williams. But yeah, it's not good. Yusuf Kayet, I will say, you threw him out saying he leans more 4. I actually think he is a natural 3. The problem is he was so far from ready last year, and he didn't get many opportunities, but he didn't make a field goal from 2-point range on the whole season. He made, I think, 9 threes. So depending on if you buy the offseason buzz or not, like there are some rosy conversations being had about him right now, but I'm in a very big believe it when I see it stance on Yusuf right
now. Yeah. This team last year under Howard, it seemed like at times, and their defensive rating on KenPom last year wasn't actually terrible. Wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. But it seemed like at times they were just completely disengaged on the defensive end. Is that a Howard thing? Was that a roster construction thing? Do you think this team, the way it's made up now, has a chance to be better defensively?
I absolutely do. It's a Jet Howard thing is what I would call it. I think there's a lot of teams out there, and I make jokes at the Howard family's expense because it's my team and I can do that, right? I think there's a lot of teams out there that you just have a guy you have to play for whatever reason, and maybe that guy doesn't buy in on one side of the ball, and it affects everybody else's buy-in. Jet absolutely had that sort of presence. Now, people would argue whether it was like a mental willingness to defend or if it was just conceptually he struggled. He was a step behind. I think a lot of it was mental. And I don't know if it's basketball IQ or whatever you want to call it, but the guy just thought the team was in man-to-man when they were in zone, like constantly, or vice versa. So odd coming from a coach's son, clearly. I think Juwan Howard can coach, and I think he can coach defense. I think his offensive sets they're not Matt Painter level, but they're good, in my opinion. So I don't doubt his acumen, and I think he caught some flack just given the fact that it was his son who had these struggles of like, does Juwan even care? I think he does care, and I think we've seen good defenses under Juwan Howard. This was the 4th best defense in the country a couple seasons ago. And yes, they had a lot better personnel. When you have Isaiah Livers and Eli Brooks, like that team's going to be better defensively. But I think Terrace Reed projects as a very high-level collegiate defender. He should be an immediate upgrade on that end from Hunter Dickinson. The problem is he's equally a drop-off from Hunter offensively as he is an upgrade defensively. But I think Namari Burnett, Terrace Reed, if those guys are both in big minute roles, you really like the foundation that you have defensively this year.
Yeah, 100%. I really like Burnett from what I saw. Not like an insane shooter, but can shoot the ball some. But yeah, then the defense, he'll be able to take those guys that McDaniel just can't do to size straight up.
The one thing I would say on Burnett, sorry to jump in, but I think I'm really rosy on him compared to anybody else I've talked to for a couple of reasons. One, I am a fan of pedigree recruits, like guys that made it through the prestigious high school levels, and everybody had eyes on him, and everybody agreed they were a high-level player, right? Like he was a 5-star recruit by pretty much all services. Michigan wanted him bad at the time. They didn't get him. He goes to Texas Tech. Obviously, a lot happened at Texas Tech, coaches in and out. Terrence Shannon is a good example of a guy who he didn't really show what he showed at Illinois at Texas Tech. Now, Namari jumps to Alabama first, and Nate Oates, again, like, was there a weirder situation in the country last year than whatever happened at Alabama? Like, crazy, obviously off the court, and he still found minutes, in my opinion, the best team in the country at their most loaded positional group, right? Like, he had to beat out either Javon Quinterly or Mark Sears or even Brandon Miller to an extent to earn minutes at the 2 and the 3 last year. And he did. He earned those. He was a regular part of that because of what he did defensively on a team that was elite defensively all season long. So I'm really hopeful that there is a jump there. I think like a lot of people are still skeptical of him for some reason, just because he hasn't been like a good offensive starter for any team yet. But, he's not going to be asked to do too much. If he can just shoot the ball, be a complimentary guard to Doug and defend his ass off, then I think there's a really good chance we look back a year from now like, wow, he's a 30-minute no-brainer guy at Michigan that has all defense potential in this conference that can really help right the ship in a big way.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like that's the role he can't be tasked, I think, with the role of being like the guy.
Yeah.
That's where I think the drop off would come off. But yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. I'm pretty high on him as well. Something that I was just, doing a little last minute research today. And then this note also reminded me that Wisconsin had 21 games decided by 6 or less points, which is still just mind boggling to me. But Michigan goes 3-10 in games decided by 5 points or less last season. My background is analytics, stats, whatever. And so like for me, these close games are more or less coin flips. I think you can factor in coaching a bit. And I think this kind of relates to Jeff Park's question is what do you see as Juwan's future with Michigan? Does he still have multiple years left to build a winner? And then like just in season, like is there, they go 3-10 in these close games. Is there anything you'd like to see different from him next year? Obviously, given the caveat that we aren't on the coaching staff and we don't know all the variables that go into it.
Yeah, with the end of game stuff, and then I'll get to Jeff's question. It's a good question. I find that I lean more on the side of the fence with end of game flukiness being personnel related. Like to me, teams that seem to do well in those spots are teams that have a very dynamic player who can either win his one-on-one matchup or is good in the pick and roll. Or I think you guys know this, like it's hard when your best player is a post player in end of game situations. And Hunter was always Michigan's best player. Their big bright moment at the end of the game last year was when Hunter hit a miracle 3 to beat Wisconsin. The issue that's hard to square is like, okay, not only did Michigan have Hunter, they had 2 lottery pick-ish guys. Why weren't those guys better in these end of game spots? And the answer is, well, Michigan thought Jet Howard was that guy for the first 2 months of the season. And that's not using Jet Howard correctly. Like I pray for Orlando Magic fans, if they're playing at the end of games, to give the ball to Jet Howard and get out of the way. He really struggles in that spot. Now, he is great in the middle of a game or when you're running action to get him open looks, but you can't really do that the way Michigan tried to do it in a one-possession game. Kobe should have been that guy all season long. They started shifting a lot of stuff to him in the final month and a half of the season. But at that point, it honestly was too late. And then even when they were doing some of that with success, like Jet was hurt. So they had weird guys that weren't floor spacers on the floor with Kobe. And it was just all around messy. I do blame the coaching staff harshly for that. Like they really played tiddlywinks for 2 months trying to have Jet Howard be the star of the show. And I think the season would have been different if they realized their personnel better earlier in the year. Now, for trajectory stuff with Juwan, I don't think his job is in danger this season as long as the young core that they have makes personal strides. If Doug McDaniel, if Terrace Reed, and if Namari Burnett, I'm lumping him in because they have 2 years, maybe even 3 years, I think, left of Namari Burnett, if I'm remembering that correctly. Those 3 to me are guys that you like, that you think you can win 2 to 3 years down the road from, that are also the first 3 options on this team. If those guys struggle, if there's unhappiness galore there, then I think, you have to start to question what's the culture like here at this program. But my larger fear with Juwan is the administration going to turn on him? Is he going to struggle? Is the fans going to turn on him? My larger fear is he going to want to leave? Because a lot of his answers right now are not long-term answers. He brought in a lot of guys who are kind of stopgaps that have to cover up for the holes that departed. He's not recruiting well right now. He's still recruiting big fish, but I mean, they don't have a young core that you look forward to and say, we can't wait till these guys are juniors or seniors. They have George Washington III, and that's it right now. And that's really scary, especially when you just lost your best player to a bigger NIL program. Like, what happens if Doug and Terrace are really good on an NIT team this year? Do they leave? Do they go get paid? Like that's a very realistic scenario. So I'm afraid, because Jace is theoretically in his final year at Michigan. And when Jace Howard is gone, I'm honestly speculating that Juwan Howard might want to be gone. So I would sort of do a wait and see approach, both from a how will the program feel about him, but also how will he feel about the program until next summer. And then I think we'll have a lot more clarity.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we do primarily on this show is really kind of go through the new guys just to prep everybody on, what the makeup of everybody's team looks like. And we already talked about Burnett, or you did extensively earlier. But as we look at Trey Jackson coming in from Seton Hall, just your thoughts on how he projects, appeared to be a good 3-point shooter, although not on high volume, maybe a pick and pop guy, but going into senior year, I believe, still only averaged 6.5 points a game. Just kind of where do you see him slot in?
Yeah, I think if he's used correctly on a good team, his role looks very similar to what it has with Seton Hall. I think if you're asking him to do much more than what he's done, which is 16 to 18 minutes a game, then that likely means your team has underperformed or you're in an injury situation or something. Now, we addressed Michigan has a big hole at the three. Depending on who you ask, he might be the first option to fill that hole. I think if that's the plan, it's very much going to be a by committee approach, which will hurt Michigan, much like it did last year, where they did a by committee approach at the 4 and they never found an answer. I don't want to crap on him too much because I will give Juwan Howard credit. He didn't just go get Olivier Kamwa. He was adamant that the 4 was such an issue. He got 2 guys to play the 4. And now, if Trey Jackson can just play the 4, like if there was an answer at the 3, I would love the ad because he's the perfect off the bench 4 that is going to give you good minutes without really wanting more. The problem, once again, is there's other positions that are wide open that he might have to slide down to. And I'm not confident. I think some Michigan fans are. I personally don't see it at all with Trey.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I'll throw out with the usage, not saying that he'll take this huge jump. He was used as a center for the past 2 seasons, and he's just not a center at all. Yeah. He's not at all. He's a slasher. I went back and watched some of his tape, and I was surprised at how well he moved and how well he slashed. So I think that's
because my fear is he's not a center and he's not a 3.
Yeah, that's where I was. It's I think people are seeing that and being like, well, Michigan doesn't have a 3, so he can do things that sort of fit a 3. Yeah, I think him and Nakama are both obviously just 4s, and then you do just have to figure out whatever at the 3. And I think we should talk about him, right? I forget what the exact tweet was, but basically that Nakama could be the best player not named Edey in the conference or something like that. Wasn't that a tweet circulating recently? Is Nakama the best player in the Big Ten not named Zach Edey?
No, he's not. But oh man, I got to be careful on this one.
We can switch to just what do you think of him coming in project for him?
Thank you for writing that ship. Look,
who tweeted that?
I think it was Davis Mosley, he's been on our show with the Sleepers a couple of times.
Okay.
And
he does good work. I really like his work.
Yeah, he really has grinded and hustled his way into covering recruiting for Michigan in a way that nobody really was. So he does. I think he would be fine with me saying this. He gets a little overeager sometimes. He likes to play up the drama and likes to share some things. And I know he got some reports from behind the scenes on how guys were looking in practice and shared the optimism there. And then it kind of got lit like a wildfire. I think Kamwa's very good. I want to be very clear about that. I think he would be a top tier starter, in my opinion, on any team in the conference. And you guys have a pretty loaded 4 position. I think I went to bat for your 4 position when we had DK on our show last week. Kaufman, Wren, and First are super talented guys that we have no idea what they're going to look like when they're not next to Zach Edey, but they're probably going to look awesome. And it wouldn't surprise me if either of those guys were all conference players if they get put in a second or first option role one day. I think Kamwa is similar to that. I think there's a fair argument that if Kamwa was on Purdue, he would be your best 4 and would probably play 25-ish minutes on that team. And that probably sounds crazy to you guys. And I think there's a lot of other teams in this conference that would feel the same way. Carter was looking at me like he wouldn't play over Malik Hall. And I'm like, yes, he would. He's really, really good. Yes, so I think people are going to be surprised. The question is, can he be a first option? And he has to prove that to everyone, himself included, right? He was never used like that at Tennessee. Tennessee's offense is such a everybody eats offense that His good games popped because it's rare that you see anybody in a Tennessee offense have 20-point games. And he had a few of them, right? And he wasn't even supposed to be the guy scoring 20, which does bode well if you want to be the optimistic Michigan fan. But I think a good year for him would be earn all conference honors in some way, whether that's third team, whether that's all defense. I don't know. The promising thing is he does show potential to be an all defense guy. He's a fantastic leader, super well spoken kid. So if you are stepping away from the on court or on paper stuff and just saying like, hey, this program needed a reset, he's the perfect guy to be the face of that, because he's going to come in and work his tail off and really change the habits of this team emotionally and mentally in a way that was much needed.
Gotcha. Yeah, and as far as Carter's concerned with that comment, I would say that he would not start over the idea of Malik Hall as Michigan State projects Malik Hall to be, but he would start over the reality of Malik Hall.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Malik's still on the all breakout team as he has been for a couple of years, right? And
right.
We'll see. We'll see if that happens.
Now, you guys have one freshman coming in, George Washington III, looks like a big-time deep-range shooter, but 165 pounds. Is his body ready to go to play in the Big Ten right now? How much of a role do you think he sees on this team as a freshman?
It's a good question. I actually want to ask you guys this, because when I put my optimism hat on, which is not always on, believe it or not, I have been trying to squint my way into convincing myself that if Fletcher Lawyer could do what he did last season, George Washington III could. So I want to ask you guys this. At what point with Fletcher, from like August 1st, 2022, at what point did you know like that guy can play 30 minutes on a really good team?
I don't know about 30 minutes, but there was a lot more. I won't speak for Joe, but I think there was more expectation that Fletcher would get quite a few minutes than there was that Braden would, until word kind of started trickling out of what people were seeing in practices.
Okay. And see, I was opposite. I watched Braden Smith's film in July, and I was like, this dude is like, it wasn't a shot at Fletcher. I was just like, this dude is different. I think Fletch for me probably took a couple of weeks of like seeing actual game film, being like, oh yeah, like he's like, he can actually fit in. And I think the thing, because I get what you're saying, right? Like similar size, I think Fletch is a little bit bigger. Fletch wasn't good defensively, but he was just in the right spots often. If George Washington can get to that level on defense, then at least like, it doesn't mean he'll be good, but he can at least, it's better than just being in the wrong spot straight up. Because I'm pretty high on him too. Like the dude's just a bucket straight up. I really, really like the shooting. I don't think I think Fletch is a little bit better of a driver coming in. Just from what I've seen, Washington really wanted to stay on the perimeter. But no, I get where you're coming from, at least. Whether I fully believe it or not, I don't know, but I get what you're coming from.
Yeah, and I think my thing with that too is like, he doesn't, like if he was Fletcher, that'd be a home run of all home runs, right? He doesn't need to be Fletcher to serve that role on Michigan this year, though. Like he could be 60% Fletcher, and I think he probably starts at the 2 for Michigan and slides Damari Burnett to the 3, and they still feel way better about things. So the big thing is like, can he make shots, and is he passable defensively? Like if he steps on the court and is a 37% volume 3-point shooter and is not getting beat every single possession defensively, then I think he has a 20-minute role immediately, because it's such a positional need. And quite frankly, because I don't trust Jalen Llewellyn is ever going to make a shot in a Michigan uniform. So like the opportunity's there. If I'm George Washington, I have to love this, right? I mean, I know his recruitment took a turn and he thought he was going to end up at Ohio State. He really stumbled his way into quite the opportunity here, because one, if he's just good at all, he's going to play. And 2, because of how lacking the rest of the recruiting class is, like he really does have a chance to not only play this year, but to assert himself as part of this young core with Doug McDaniel and Terrace Reed of like, oh, that's Michigan basketball. the next 3 years. So I am high on him, like I said, just because mostly I trust anyone Chris Holtman gets a commitment from in general. Like, look at the dudes he's had pass through. If he wanted him at one point, that bodes well, even if he cooled on him. But I think if he can start the season off the bench and work his way into like a 20-minute, 20-minute a game role, I'll be really happy with that in year one.
Yeah, you just need Michigan needs him or Llewellyn to be serviceable. Like just some other guard besides McDaniel, and allow Burnett to at some point play the three, assuming Trey Jackson doesn't turn into just some slashing three that we weren't ready for. So
but that is basically one of if Llewellyn or Washington or Kyatt or Jackson is a good Big Ten starter, then you really like this roster, honestly, because I think you know what you're getting from Kamwa, Burnett, Doug, and Terrace. It's just, is there a gaping black hole next to them, or is somebody a good starter? And I think, weirdly enough, I think it's a reasonable bet. That's why, like, I pushed back on people who are like, Michigan needs Caleb Love, because you know what you're getting if it's Caleb Love, right? He's going to have games that he wins for you. He's going to lose you 10 games too, and everyone's going to hate each other. We just went through that with Michigan. So, like, I think even if Juwan gets clowned for it, and even if it looks like a huge hole on paper, I'm really okay with the gamble of one of these four guys needs to be starter level good. And if it bites him, maybe it's a fireable offense, maybe, but it's a risk I'm happy he's taking as a Michigan fan, because I do believe in some of those chips.
Yeah. The only thing I'd say about Lawyer's situation compared to Washington is obviously Lawyer's out on the floor and everybody's got a side eye on what the National Player of the Year is doing at the same time. So, is it the same situation in terms of that? Probably not. But yeah, I mean, and maybe the better situation is Connor Essegian, if we're really going to draw a parallel there. And I don't think anybody saw, other than my son, who would remind me of it constantly, that Essegian was going to have that kind of a breakout year. So yeah, maybe he's that guy. The last thing we do related to each one of these teams is we kind of give our floor and our ceiling for where we think, what's the ceiling if everything goes right, where they might be able to finish in the Big Ten. What's the floor if things don't materialize, maybe, or our worst fears come true about the team. And then a little bit of that projecting like to the NCAA tournament type of situation too. So I guess in the Big Ten first, just, if everything goes right for this team and the pieces fit, like, what do you think their ceiling is in the Big Ten? And then where would you put their floor?
It's a good question. So ceiling wise, this is more about the Big Ten than I think it is about Michigan for me. I mean, if Northwestern can do what they did last year, would they finish fourth? I think third or fourth.
Yeah,
maybe third. I think they had the bye.
Yeah, I think third.
Right? Yeah.
Northwestern was third. Well, Northwestern was third because MSU got their game canceled with Minnesota because Rutgers wouldn't reschedule.
Right. So I think it would have been
tied for third.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
So,
it works.
But like, you get my point, right? If that Northwestern team can emerge and finish third, like, there's a world where Michigan does that this year. There absolutely is. I don't want to run around acting like I think that's going to happen, but I just think any team that's not Purdue or Michigan State, if you feel good about whatever their plan A is, then I think you can talk yourself into them emerging from that group in the middle of the pack. More realistically, like, I think a lock NCAA tournament team is their ceiling, like a 7 seed line. Like, that would be a really successful season. And I think that's my expectation of, like, if this plan works, that's how good I expect them to be. The floor is, I mean, the exact opposite, right? This could be the second or third worst team in the Big Ten. And I'm scared of that, certainly. Like, Juwan having only 4 good players on his team has been a consistent thing the last 2 seasons. So the fact that they are entering the year with such a hole scares me. I really am. I'm trying to put the optimistic fan hat on and just say, like, at the very least, if they're bad, they're going to be likable. Because that was the worst part of last year, you guys. It was so hard to watch the antics of a team that had 2 lottery picks on it and just couldn't find ways to win. At least this year, like, I can deal with, they're not good, but I like Doug McDaniel. I would go to war for that kid. So we'll see. That's scary. The floor is bad, but I'm excited for a potentially bad floor for once.
Kraig?
Ceiling? I mean, definitely. My floor was the same spot that Greg's was in terms of one of the 2 or 3. If things don't piece together right, I could see a world where they finish in the bottom 2 or 3 teams in this league. I don't think they'll be the worst team in the league because I think that's squarely is going to rest with somebody else. But my ceiling is mid-pack, probably that 7-8 if everything goes right. I'm not quite as high on the ultimate potential there, but the problem with saying ceiling is 7 or 8th best team in the Big Ten is that's also third if you look at last year. So, that's all kind of maybe potentially the same range. And then, get into the NCAA tournament if that happens, I guess.
Yeah, I'm right there. I think ceiling is I could see ceiling is like 6th for me, and then floor is probably like 12th-ish. Probably, I keep thinking through, right? Like, and I have the second tier of like Ohio, the Ohio State. I throw Maryland in there, like maybe Wisconsin. Like, I think if on average, like they probably are going to be a tier below that team for me. So that's why I probably put them somewhere in that 7-8 range, 8-9 range. But yeah, and then if there's definitely potential to make the tournament, and then from there, if they get a good matchup, like what was it 2 years ago that they were the 11th seed and made the Sweet 16 or whatever. So
yeah,
that can always happen.
I'll be
Do
really
we have any?
if they're better than Indiana. That's sort of my barometer for is this a good or a bad year? Because I think like Mike Woodson and Juwan get a lot of comparisons. I think of like they're NBA guys who can bring in talent, but can they build a winning team? And last year was Woodson's best team. Clearly, I think Juwan had a great season a couple of years ago, and now it's like, what do they do next? And I think Indiana fans feel really confident. They feel more confident than Michigan fans do. Obviously, they have some bigger name talents on that team, but that team has similar holes to me.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of using that as my barometer of like, I think they're both in the 8th to 9th range on paper. Could see either one jumping up, could see either one falling. And I just want to be better than Indiana. Also, Iowa's in the group and like is a team whose best
Iowa?
players, yeah, is a team whose best player is Peyton Sanford really better than this Michigan team?
I've got Iowa as
so.
a solid. Yeah, I've got Iowa as a solid bottom 3 team.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. People keep lumping Michigan in with them. Like they're Peyton Sanford's their best player. What are we doing?
Yeah. So I guess that kind of wraps up Michigan, Joe, right?
Yep. Yeah. Well, we can jump to Illinois. We don't want to keep you too much longer, but do you have any thoughts on Illinois before we kind of get out of here, or before not we get out of here, we let you go?
I sure do. I wore my Orange Crush shirt today just for this little moment. So thank you for indulging me on this. Illinois fans, I think, despise me or love me, one of the two. No one really knows right now. I go through cycles with this fan base. I just want to say I love Illinois basketball. Like if there's a program I admire from far, it's Illinois as a fan. Like I just love to consume Illinois basketball 7 days of the week. It's always so entertaining for a multitude of reasons. I got a lot of crap for saying Illinois' offseason was a D grade. And I had Michigan's offseason graded as a D+. So I liked Michigan's offseason better than Illinois' offseason. They both were on the D line for me because both teams, in my opinion, their whole offseason plan failed. Like Illinois' whole offseason plan was go get a star transfer point guard. They got nothing. Michigan's whole offseason plan was get Caleb Love. They got Olivier Kamwa. So, to me, Illinois is better. Obviously, they got Terrence Shannon back. That's a huge win. Coleman Hawkins back is a really nice boost. Their fans seem to think it's a lot of addition by subtraction. Their point guard, Ty Rodgers, also thinks it's a lot of addition by subtraction and is publicly saying that. He got the bad people out and the good people in. So, to me, that's a move you'd expect from the Illinois teams that had crappy locker rooms the last few years, like a guy going on a podcast and claiming how bad his ex-teammates were as people. That's a little bit of a red flag for me from the guy who's never made a three-pointer who's supposed to be a 30-minute guy at point. So, yeah, all that said, I'm fascinated by where this team will finish because talent-wise, they're top 4 in this conference, I would say. But it's such a puzzle piece for Brad to put together once again. Like, is Gibbs Lawhorn the point guard? Is Ty Rodgers the point guard? Is Terrence Shannon just pretending he's a point guard, but it doesn't matter because they're so talented around him? Like, I don't know. I buy that they're going to have ups and downs again. But I'm excited to hear you guys talk about them because I need some opinions that aren't just me yelling in an echo chamber about Illinois at this point.
Yeah, we got you there. So, if you don't have anything else, we can let you go. We appreciate you coming on. Let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. This is always fun. And honestly, I'd rather plug what you guys are doing than me. Although anyone watching this probably knows what you guys are doing, but follow Joe at a minimum because Joe's all his like scout packages he puts together are literally the best thing you can get from a Big Ten basketball standpoint. If you watch all his stuff and then you still want to find me, you can find me at GUSC12 at Sleepers Media is the podcast I host.
Well, I appreciate that. So definitely have you back on maybe for a Purdue Michigan game during the year, something like that. Maybe some more preseason stuff. We'll figure it out. So appreciate you coming on, Greg.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Thanks a lot, Greg.
So yeah, that was
All
Greg
right.
Waddell, Sleepers Media. Definitely go follow him, even if he doesn't want to promote himself. So we'll move on to Illinois, 20-13, 11-9 in the Big Ten, which finished them. I don't even know where that was. It was like 7th or something, maybe. Could have honestly been
11-9. No, 11-9 was tied for 3rd.
Yeah, they finished 6th. Iowa and Michigan were also 11-9, and they were 7th and 8th last year in the Big Ten. So everybody was between 12-8 and 9-11. There was 11 teams that finished between 9-11 and 12-8. So
right.
This was a team last year. I believe I had them number 1 preseason, if I recall correctly. Actually, I think I had Illinois 1 and Michigan 2, if I recall correctly, or something like that. Obviously did not get there. Lots of up and downs, kind of like Greg said. But now, they do obviously bring in a lot of transfers. They bring in 4 transfers or 3 transfers and 3 freshmen. They bring back more of their key pieces, I think, coming into this year than last year, and Coleman Hawkins, Terrence Shannon, and I think that'll help a little bit instead of having to fit like every new piece together. They already have some. They'll return 3 of their starters for sure, and then to be determined on what they do with points. If it's Ty Rodgers, they return 3 of their starters and then a bench player. So a little more continuity for them, I think, this year, which will be important. I was kind of going through and I get I already know I'm going to buy back into them. Similar to Greg, I enjoy, even through all the craziness and the clunkiness, I just enjoyed watching Illinois basketball last year. I love Coleman Hawkins, even though he's sporadic and all that. His ceiling is way up there to me. Terrence Shannon is electric, probably the fastest player with the ball in his hands in the Big Ten, or at least one of them, if I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple. And I like some of these transfers that they brought in. So I don't know. Can you talk me out of them, or are you kind of with me as an overall?
Well, I mean, I think the talent level's there. I just think it all depends on how those pieces fit together. And I mean, obviously, Greg already mentioned it there, but the point guard needs, and I know a lot of Illinois fans and coming back at me on Twitter and whatnot, throwing out there Ty Rodgers playing point guard, but let's not act like he didn't go out and actively seek an elite point guard. And he did. And they went out and they sought after that in multiple places, multiple times. And they thought they landed a piece. And then that piece left, basically, I think, over some rumors that another person might come. And at the end of the day, they just didn't make a splash there. So what they have right now is a stopgap or a plan to try to do it by committee or whatever to make it work. And it, to me, is just all going to depend on how well that works. Because we've seen plenty of times that if you don't have an elite point guard, especially when it comes to March, or at least a really good point guard, things can go haywire. And, I think as we look at this group as a whole, Terrence Shannon was first team all Big Ten in the coaches voting last year, and he's going to be one of the best players in the Big Ten, not named Zach Edey. He's an elite scorer, but I think sometimes he can get really hot and cold situationally, not necessarily always a stable scorer all the time. He'll heat up and score a lot of points, but sometimes he can disappear in terms of just looking kind of inefficient at different times. 3-point percentage wasn't super high last year, obviously. So, where besides him is that stable scoring coming? You can say Coleman Hawkins. I think the exact same MOs out there for him that was going into last year, which was potential to have elite talent and to be an elite player, but can he do it efficiently? Not turning the ball over 2.5 times a game. Chucked up a lot of threes last year, but shot under 30%. So does he finally make that jump and become a really efficient, high quality player in the Big Ten and nationally as well? So, I think those two things, we know that Terrence Shannon's going to put it in the bucket a lot. He's going to be a high level scorer. Who the point guard is, if Coleman Hawkins finally makes that jump or not. And then, Dane Danger just at that center position, serviceable, good center, elite Big Ten center, not yet. But going into that third year, maybe he makes that jump and becomes that guy.
Yeah. I'm going to quickly just toss this in. And I had it last year, and I might have thrown it out there. But maybe this, I don't know. Dane Danger's movement and stuff, just not the passing, and I don't think he's good. He reminds me so much of Travion Williams, just everything,
Mm-hmm.
the movement, the shakes, I don't think he gets there with the passing, and that's a big part of what made Travion so good. But in terms of post play, I see a scenario where Danger does take a jump. The big question is going to be the point guard, obviously, right? We've talked about it 5 times already. If you're any sort of Illinois discourse over the offseason is around this point guard. I think I'm cool with Rutgers at least getting the shot there. I see the vision with it. And it just goes back to kind of what last year. I don't think they need to maybe go far in the tournament. Yes, you probably just need some sort of really good point guard that can play well. That's been shown pretty consistently. To be good in the Big Ten, I think they just need somebody that's solid, that can at times just kind of all right, we're going to kind of run the offense here. This is what we need to do. Just kind of slow things down and set things up. I think Rutgers can do that. And I buy into it just because they have facilitating elsewhere. Hawkins is a dude that can pass. I just mentioned Danger. He's not an elite passer, but I like some of the passing. They bring in Marcus Domas from Southern Illinois. The dude's Domas ran, I don't have the number up. Domas ran a lot of pick and rolls last year. He handled the ball. He had, I think, a few assists a game. He's a dude that can, he can facilitate some. Harmon's more of a risky passer, but he can facilitate some. And so it's can you get this point guard by committee type just because you have 4 guys on the court at all times that can kind of facilitate and move the ball? But with that, there's still a thing where you need somebody just to be okay, I am running this offense right now. I can set things up. If they can get that for a little bit, at least a decent bit out of some Rutgers, maybe Sincere Harris, maybe Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn, maybe Shannon slides in. And that's, I threw the word maybe out 4 times. That's the big thing with them is maybe.
Right.
I think that it gives them a higher ceiling because of it, though, to me.
For sure. And I do love what Sincere Harris brings to the table just in terms of his grittiness and his defensive pressure and all that type of stuff. And I think he's just kind of a glue guy, a gritty guy on that team. And, going into his sophomore season, he might make another jump yet. So there's a chance that his role becomes a little bit more to combine some scoring with all the little things that he does. And I don't think we can forget how high they were on Luke Goody coming into last year before he got injured and played some games. But I think there's a real shot that he's a breakout player for Illinois this year because he's going into his junior year, but it's really going to feel a lot more like his sophomore year. Shot over 40% in the limited amount of games that he did get to play last year from 3. But I think that's a guy that could really expand upon his role this year as well. So a lot of talent. And you've talked about Domask already. You want to hit on the other 2 new guys coming in terms of Justin Harmon? Yeah,
Harmon's, he's more of a Justin Harmon from Utah Valley. He's more of honestly a Shannon Jr. type. He's not as good or anything, but he's that same kind of build of this kind of quicker guard that just wants to attack the rim a ton. He wasn't super efficient, but he took 200 shots at the rim last season. And if I recall, I don't think Utah Valley is a mid-major, but I don't think they were bad. I think they were pretty good. So it's not like he's putting up numbers on just like a completely bad team. Like I believe Utah Valley was pretty good. I could try to find their KenPom rating when I have a second, but he's a guy that's once he gets downhill can be, he shoots the ball okay, he can defend okay. And then Quincy Greer from Oregon is more of a 6'8". He's more of a 4, and that's something I want to hit on next. He's kind of has had to play forward, center, but he's a dude that's wants to step out to the 3. Shot 37.4% on, I believe, like 3 to 4 attempts a game. I forget the exact number off the top of my head. Moves fairly well on the perimeter, can like make some plays out there defensively, which makes me think he's more of a 4. But those are the 3 transfers. I'm pretty high on Domas. Like I think he's a perfect Illinois player, at least on offensive, just a dude that can do a bit of everything. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on them?
Yeah, I just, looking at Harmon, I saw the Utah Valley thing and I was like, eh. Then I kind of went and watched the film and I was like, okay, like this guy looks pretty good on tape. Like good finisher, nice floater in terms of his mid-range game. I think you said in one of the tweets in terms of whether his ball handling was elite enough or not. But it looks like a physical guy that's going to really push the pace when they get in transition. And if they play defense like they have in some years and they can get out and really run, again, looks to me like a perfect fit in that guard position for what Illinois likes to do. And I don't know on these 3 freshmen, we talked already a little bit about Lawhorn, but obviously a guy that just an elite scorer, and at one point in time he was committed to Purdue. I'm not going to pretend like I wasn't disappointed when he decommitted because just an absolute elite scorer and could do it at every level. Even at 6'1", he can get to the basket and attack the rim. He can absorb some contact and still find ways to score. He's got a nice floater mid-range game. He can shoot from really, really deep from 3, and just a really dynamic playmaker in terms of being able to get to his own shot and make his own buckets from that standpoint. So obviously a little bit's going to be just with any freshman point guard in the Big Ten, if you want to call him a point guard, with any freshman point guard in the Big Ten, just how ready is he going to be and how quick can he get there in terms of providing, good minutes for this Illinois team. And if he can do that off the jump, like Braden Smith did it off the jump for us, then maybe all of our concerns at the point guard position are, not valid.
Yeah. And that's my concern. That's my concern with him. I'm pretty high on him, to be honest. Like I think he's similar to George Washington, just a dude that can put the ball in the bucket. But I just don't know if he's a point guard. Like I really think he's going to be better off ball, and I don't know if Illinois can really afford that. So maybe he does come in, and if he, like you said, if he's can be kind of their point guard and take that from there, that'll be good. But I'm excited. I'm excited to watch him just because I think there is a ton of upside. We'll see exactly what happens. I'll hit on Hansberry quickly. Just kind of this I feel like Illinois forward that's a dude that he's going to play more in the post, but good passer. Isn't really a jump shot yet, but moves well at his size, can be solid defensively. Another guy that's just going to come and be able to facilitate. And then also my one just not random, but little thing about him is like, this dude is an elite screener. Like it was wild watching his film. And I know it's against high school, but he played at I'm forgetting where he's played off the top of my head. Mount St. Joseph or something like that. He went up against good schools at times, and like he just made such good contact consistently. And it sounds like a little thing, but if you're having a dude set, 20 screens a game or whatever, if he can make legitimate contact, that's going to just free up more room for the point guard to be able to try to attack. If that's Terrence Shannon, that's another step that the defender has to get back. And now Hansberry has more room to roll, and there's just more space. Like it's not talked about. It's not like the thing you're looking for most in a big, but it's just something I want to throw out there because I think he'll be one of the best screeners in the Big Ten from day one, assuming it translates at all. So that's my points on him. I think he'll have some role this year, to be determined. And I think I'll just throw out Nicola Moretti, 6'1" point guard from Italy. I think he's just going to need a year probably to develop. But my last point on Illinois, and I know we're kind of running a little long. We'll get to Rutgers after this. They have a lot of 4s. They're kind of like Michigan. They have a lot of 4s, but they just don't have a 5. Michigan doesn't really have a 3. They don't have a backup 5. Sorry. They have Dane Danger, obviously at 5, he'll start. But like after that, it seems like it's going to be a lot of like Hawkins at the 5 or Greer at the 5, who's more of an undersized. Hansberry's 6'8", he might have to play the 5 some. And so I think it's going to be a whole different. Like I think when they go there, they should probably buy into this just up tempo. We have 5 dudes that can handle the ball and pass, and we're just going to try to pretty much move as fast as possible, move the ball well. So that's my biggest concern is they just don't have a backup big.
Yeah, if Quincy's playing the 5 in minutes against Zach Edey, that's not a recipe for success. So, floor ceiling time.
Yeah. I put you first for Michigan, so I'll go first. Is it fair? This isn't gonna be my answer, but is the right answer just like the floor is like 12th and the ceiling's like 2nd for them? Just like the Big Ten is their ceiling and floor. My answer will be, I'm bought in. Yeah, I have them in that second group, so their ceiling is 3rd to me. Like I think that they have the potential to get there. Floor for me will be 8th. Yeah, that feels about right. Ceiling 3rd, floor 8th. What about you?
I'm 3rd and 9th, which is my second level. I think 3 through 9, that group of teams for me, I think is pretty solidified in my mind in terms of who's there. So I just really think, that group of teams could all go anywhere from 3rd through 9th in the Big Ten. If everything goes right. Because, to me, at 4 positions, they've got guys that arguably could be in the top 5 in the Big Ten at their position at 4 of those positions.
Yeah.
It, to me, it just all comes down to point guard, what they have and who runs the show and how well that show gets run. Nationally, I think the ceiling there is a second weekend team, Sweet 16, and who knows about matchups from that point on. Don't see that as a potential Final Four team, just because of the guard struggles that we've talked about.
Yeah, I'm with you there. They can be a second weekend team. Expect them to be. I think that they can, be probably a little bit better than last season would be my expectation, just slightly. So, that anything else on them? We'll move to Rutgers, our last team. All right. Rutgers comes in 19-15 last year, 10-10. They have the NIT first round loss, 151st in offense, and then 6th in defense. Just your stereotypical Rutgers team. They lose Caleb McConnell, Paul McCahey, Cam Spencer, Dean Reber also, and potentially Oscar Palmquist, but he may be back, to be determined on that. They still have, I believe, 2 open scholarships. According, Aaron Breitman of the Scarlet Faithful, and everybody should go check him out if you're looking for Rutgers stuff. Scarlet Faithful. He's kind of reporting that Austin Williams, he's like a 6'4" grad transfer, is probably going to be coming to Rutgers. So he put that in one of his articles. Definitely go check that out. That is where I got it from. Still have 2 roster spots. One of them is kind of looking like it's going to this a potential like backup 2 guard for them is what it's looking like. They bring in Noah Fernandez, a 5'11" point guard, Jeremiah Williams, the 6'5" point guard, who was the former transfer to Illinois. He's probably sitting out this year. He's still kind of recovering. Emmanuel Ogbole is a 6'10" center from JUCO. And then they bring in 2 freshmen. Jermichael Davis is kind of a lower ranked point guard, be more of a backup role. And then Gavin Griffiths. And Gavin Griffiths he's a 6'7" wing, and he's an elite shooter. Was probably one of the best in his class. I don't know exactly where he ended up being ranked, but I think he's like a top 50 dude. Or at least last time I checked, he was like 44, something like that. There's some, he's gotten some buzz from what I've seen about a guy that can come in and kind of help on the offense. And I think that's the biggest thing with Rutgers is I don't think they'll be quite as good defensively, but if they can be much better offensively, then, they can be in the similar spot to last year.
Yeah, but I think last year ended up being a disappointment for where they hoped to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I could agree with that in terms of where they actually finish. Maybe not the preseason expectation that last year's team in terms of what they potentially could be coming into the year. I guess for me, as I look through this team, I just wonder, I've said multiple times that I think Cliff is the second best center in the Big Ten. People can argue with me on that if they want, but I think he's a great rim runner. I think he's super athletic. I think he's a good defender. I love what Cliff does. Absolutely. My question is, who is Cliff without an elite offensive guard out there with him, or somebody that's going to take attention away from a scoring standpoint? And who's going to be that person? And I mean, to me, that's got to be Derek Simpson that makes that jump, right? Like, it's got to be. So I think so much of what Rutgers does this year is going to depend on, they've had a long line of those guards over the years that are guys that can get their own shot, get their own bucket, and can hit buckets in big time moments. And I think Simpson could turn into that guy if he makes that freshman to sophomore year jump. But I think a lot of it's just going to depend on whether he does or not.
Yeah, and he's going to be he's going to be one of the breakout candidates, like that freshman to sophomore jump. You saw it a bit last year. I mean, he absolutely took over. It was early in the year, I believe December or early January. I think it was December, but he took over the second half of the Indiana game and kind of just willed them to win for a bit. He had like a 5-6 minute stretch where he just kind of got buckets. Wasn't efficient last year, so you need that to jump up. But I think he showed last year, like, hey, I have potential to be this scorer. I just need a bit of time. I like I like the Noah Fernandez pickup. Just, he's a dude that's going to come in. He can shoot the ball really well. He plays aggressive defense. He's a pass first guy, so he can be a true facilitator. I think he'll be this combo of a legitimate shooting threat and passing ability that they haven't had recently. Like, I'm trying to go through it. Like, Mulcahy shot fine last year from three, but you wouldn't call him a threat from the perimeter. Fernandez will be a threat from there, and I think that'll be big. If Simpson can be more efficient, now you could potentially have a trio of Fernandez, Simpson, and then the freshman Gavin Griffiths of like dudes that can just flat out shoot the ball. And then if that happens, kind of like you alluded to, is now maybe Cliff has a bit more space to operate, or you get him more running, maybe you run more pick and rolls. Just kind of resort back to that. Don't try to use him as much in the post. Now you get him rolling to the rim or whatever. So I think that is interesting. The big thing with Rutgers last year was, right, they lost Mawat Mag 2/3 of the way through the season, something like that, right?
Right. Yep.
I have no clue if he'll be back or not in time. I assume at some point next year. I don't know if it'll be right away. Do you think, and I don't know if this was just me, not realizing how impactful he was. Mawat Mag was good. Do you think they dropped off like a cliff last year? It felt like after Mawat Mag got injured. Do you think having him back will be that big of an impact for them?
I think it was a big, I think it was a big impact to their team last year based on who else they had around him, with Spencer McConnell, Mulcahy out there on the floor. I like to compare, I guess, what Rutgers is as a basketball program a little bit to what Purdue is as a football program. And that, a lot of times we can field a starting group that can compete with the elite level teams. But if we start having injuries, we don't have backups that are 4 stars or whatever else, that can come in and still be elite players. And to me, that was just and that starting group for Rutgers was really, really good last year. But when they lose one piece, man, it was a really important piece to that team, especially defensively. They just didn't really have guys to back up and come in and fill that gap for them defensively and even offensively for what Mag did. So I don't know. I look at this team and I see, Cliff's not a guy that you're just going to throw the ball to down low and say, go do a bunch of post moves over and over again. So I see a bunch of guys on here that could be really good in their roles if they have a guy that can go get buckets or that can be a playmaker creator type guy. And I just, to me, that's got to be Simpson. And if they get Mawat back, and then you got Cliff and you got Fernandez, I don't know, at 5'11", is he going to be able to do the same type of thing that he did when he comes to the Big Ten?
Maybe not as much, but I do think he'll still be solid. I believe he's a grad transfer too, so there's that goes for him. But yeah, and I think.
But I'm saying, is he going to be your one, right? On a top 4 Big Ten team, can he? Right, exactly. So to me, we got to see somebody make a jump, and that's likely Simpson, one way or the other.
Yep.
But yeah, that Gavin Griffiths kid looked like elite shooter with elite form at 6'7", coming in as a freshman. So I'm excited to see what he looks like out there, especially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, we do talk about like Cliff isn't a huge, like you're not going to throw it to him. You're not going to give him the same usage as like Zach Edey or anything like that. But,
Right.
maybe he does have a jump somewhere in him. He's going to have to be even more elite defensively. He can do it. Like he's shown he can be the best defender in the Big Ten without a doubt. He's probably going to have to do that if Rutgers wants to keep up their, what they've kind of done these past few years on the defensive end. Expecting probably a lot of funneling to him just in being like, all right, guys, try to, if guys try to attack him at the rim, they'll take their chances. I think with Cliff down there, just how much of a beast he is. And I think big concern, and you kind of hit on already, is just like the depth. Like what happens if Derek Simpson doesn't take this huge jump, or what happens if Griffiths takes a bit of time to adjust to the Big Ten and being, as most freshmen do. What do they do in the meantime? Like they still have 2 scholarship spots open. So, I'm sure that they'll try to do something with that just to shore up a little bit more depth, but that'll be the biggest thing is I think if Simpson plays well, they can put out a solid 5, and then just like you said, it's just like what happens with the bench when they have to go to it at some point, because they'll have to, right? They aren't going to play 40 minutes a game. So,
right.
I think that's kind of everything I have on them. Do you have anything else?
No, let's go to floor ceiling on them. You going to make me go first here?
If you want me to, I can. It don't matter.
I'll go ahead and go first. So
Right.
I think Katz had them as 9th in his like way too early Big Ten rankings, which I guess just looking down through the roster surprises me a little bit compared to some of the other teams that we've talked about that are maybe in that grouping also.
Which way?
But there's also just what's that?
Or just you'll answer my question as you talk.
But like there's a piece of me that just believes in Peichel and how he gets his team to play in terms of grittiness. And to me, like Rutgers is always going to win some games just by grinding and just by getting into people and figuring out a way to grind one out, the hard way, regardless of the talent that's on the floor. So I don't, some of those other teams where I'm like, well, they could finish 4th or 5th, but they also could be 12th. I don't have Rutgers' floor quite that low. Not quite that low, just because I believe in their coach and think that he's always going to get his team to play extremely hard and get them to win some games and steal some games that they shouldn't. So my ceiling isn't quite as high for them either. So I have a ceiling in a perfect world where they could finish as high as 6th or 7th in the Big Ten, and my floor is 11th.
That's pretty similar to what I was having. Honestly, yeah. I feel like I agreed a lot with you on these, and it's just like there's just kind of this, when you're going through the tiers, it's like, okay, yeah, I could see them getting to the 6th spot, but I don't think they're not going to be competing for like the worst team in the Big Ten. That's just not going to happen.
Right.
I was quick search. The last time Rutgers was under 500 in the Big Ten was 2019 when they were 7-13. That was Peichel's 3rd year there. So past 4 years, and now they had the Harper, Baker, and then McConnell, Mulcahy kind of quartet,
Right.
I guess you could say, which helps. This would be the first year without any of those 4 in a while. So that'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I think a team that nobody's going to want to go up against. Like nobody's going to want to play Rutgers or anything, but also a team that I think it's going to be harder for them to get to that upper tier.
Right. It really stinks for them. Who's the kid that decommitted? Do you remember? That was a really high ranked recruit.
Oh, no, not off the top of my head. I could.
Yeah, I don't remember really either, quick. But I have like a secret love affair with Rutgers basketball program in general. Just in terms of like the way they play and Peichel in general, just the way he operates and everything. And I actually genuinely kind of felt bad when that kid decommitted because I thought they were like getting a big time recruit to go with some pieces that they had there that could make an immediate impact. And I thought it was going to be really interesting to see. And then, man, I was shocked that Cam Spencer left too, right?
Money.
Yeah, I know, man. But like, that dude gives you a shot and you go there 1 year and he like kind of features you offensively a lot and then you just bail on him.
And then
Uh,
I don't want to steal Greg and Sleeper Media's thunder, but did you see the Trilly tweet about somebody's not happy in the Pacific Northwest, and it's hypothetically Mulcahy? That was
Yeah.
the one that surprised me that he left, and then goes to Washington. Like, but whatever, they do it best for them. That's cool. One good thing for Rutgers, even if this is a down year, you have Ace Bailey coming the following year, I think he's number 2 right now in the 2024 class, and you potentially get the number 1 player in Ron Harper's brother. Oh my gosh, what's his name? What's his first name? That's gonna bug me.
I don't remember his first name.
Dylan Harper. He's the number
Yeah.
1 ranked player in the 2024 class. So, like, even if this is a down year, you have potential to bring in the top 2 players in the 2024 class. So that'll be fun. I'm excited to watch both of them. Obviously, a year away. So I think that's it for us. I think that's kind of wraps up our Big Ten mid to mid-ish. We'll call this a mid Big Ten preseason preview. For Purdue fans, we are going to be doing a Purdue show sometime soon. Potentially during the midst of the European trip, we might do kind of a post-game show. We don't have all of the, we don't have it all planned out yet exactly what we want. So we'll get details out as those come for us, but we will be planning on doing, I would say pretty confidently, we'll have at least one show surrounding the European trip, and then also a show, like at least one show, if not maybe 2, like previewing Purdue for the season. So definitely have some stuff coming up, some potential interviews coming up as well. So stay tuned for that. Anybody that isn't a Purdue fan, we appreciate you tuning in. This will be a place that you can tune in after games that your team plays Purdue if you want the opposite fans' perspective or whatever. But I try to stay somewhat biased or unbiased, but
Unbiased.
Joe. Unbiased. I do not try to stay biased. You got anything else? I'm just kind of rambling now, and I know we gotta go.
No, hey, for those of you guys that are Greg Bragg's fans, he will be back soon. It was when we get to actual Purdue coverage and talking about Purdue, he will be back. That is his wheelhouse. He did not want to join us for all the conversations regarding the other 13 teams in the Big Ten. So he will be back soon. About 30 pounds lighter than he was probably the last time you saw him, if you didn't catch his quick pop in the other day. So he'll be getting back with us soon, and I'm looking forward to going to the scrimmage. We've been hearing buzz about what this guy's doing, what that guy's doing. Raphael's tweet the other day going off about TKR and what Jones can look like defensively. I'm just ready to see some guys on the court, even if they're just banging against each other for a little bit.
I'm just ready for college hoops. Like, I need college hoops. I'm doing all this preview stuff, which is fun, and I enjoy it a lot, but like, I need to watch some live basketball. So
I hear you.
Follow Kraig at Kraig Bowers 34, and then also Boiler Diehards on Facebook. You can follow me at Joe Jackson CBB. If you want more Big Ten preview stuff, I'm breaking down all the players on my YouTube at Feed the Post. So definitely would appreciate people subscribing there, giving likes, things like that. So appreciate everybody tuning into this Big Ten preview. Like I said, we'll be back very soon with some more stuff. So with that, we'll see you next time.